So we're here with Dylan Ratigan. We have our favorite financial expert, best-selling New York Times author, former host of his own show on MSNBC, award-winning Bloomberg journalist, and he's now on the weekly podcast for Tasty Trade called Truth or Skepticism with Tom Sosnoff. It's Dylan Ratigan. Hi, Dylan. How are you?
I'm very good.
So let's get into it. The chairman of the Fed is a guy named Powell, right? He's the new one. And here's
Chairman Powell to you.
Chairman Powell to me. Yes.
And to me and to all of us.
Yes.
But sure.
And he embraces his gray, right? Which gives you a lot more confidence in what he has to say. I'm embracing my gray. So here's what he had to say. I hope you can hear it, and then we'll talk about it. He had some big stuff to say.
The Fed is the source of all U.S. currency, and it regulates the economy by setting interest rates. In the Depression, it was given vast power to lend money in an emergency. It used that authority for the first time in the 2008 collapse, and for the second time 9 weeks ago.
Has the Fed done all it can do?
Well, there's a lot more we can do. We're not out of ammunition by a long shot. No, there's really no limit to what we can do with these lending programs that we have.
So that was big news, apparently, right, Dylan? That was very big news.
Well, I mean, it yes and no. I think that what was most interesting about Chairman Powell's comments was there are a lot of folks in both the media world and in the investment community. So if you look at the Tasty Trade side of my life and the investment side of my life, and then the media and politics side of my life with you. There's a sense of that there's this obfuscation, or there's this sort of secrecy about what the Fed does and doesn't do, and how can they just make infinite money. And so I think it's a little bit disarming for people just to hear the chairman say, yeah, no, there is no limit to the amount of money we can create, and to say it in a very matter-of-factly.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously something that I've been saying for a long time, and it's something that a lot of people have been observing with great outrage. It's a mathematical fact, that the Fed can produce as much currency as it wants into the tens of trillions, as we witnessed. The real headline from that Powell interview, however, in my opinion, was not simply the validation of the fact that sure the Fed can create as much money as they want, but that Chairman Powell really came out and said that they can only, even if they lend an infinite amount of money, they're not providing cash to people that are by law being forced to stay home, for people who by law have been forced to close the most vulnerable small businesses in the country in every state in America, and they're not being given access to health care. And Chairman Powell was very blunt about the fact that he believes the Congress should be doing more direct assistance for human beings, because the Federal Reserve is not capable of doing that thing. And this is not a financial crisis. This is a biological crisis, and this is a economic crisis for people. And that is not the Fed's specialty. That is
Congress.
The healthcare system's specialty, we would hope, even though we pay twice as much, and I won't get into we all know the horrors there. And then it's an economic issue. And so whether it's on the healthcare or on the economic side, Congress has failed catastrophically in a way that will permanently change this country forever for the worse, as we've described.
I know. And people...
And it's weird to hear, so the Fed chairman's just saying it is... it's disappointing, really, because you realize that even when it's said by the most influential people in our society, it's still completely ignored by the Pelosi-Trump axis of evil.
So let me go. So let me go. I wasn't going to play, but let me play what he said. You just described what he said. I'll play it, and then we'll come back again.
March, as the Dow collapsed 8,000 points and credit markets began to freeze, Powell called an emergency meeting on a Sunday. He cut interest rates to near zero, and in partnership with the Treasury, the Federal Reserve offered more than $3 trillion in lending to banks, businesses, cities, and states. With that assurance, the credit markets essential to daily business began to function again.
Fair to say you simply flooded the system with money.
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally. So we as a central bank, we have the ability to create money digitally, and we do that by buying treasury bills or bonds or other government guaranteed securities, and that actually increases the money supply. We also print actual currency, and we distribute that through the Federal Reserve banks.
But by law, Chairman Powell's Federal Reserve can only lend money that must be paid back. Congress, he believes, should spend money to expand its historic bailout. After all, he says this emergency is nothing like 2008.
This is not because there was some inherent problem, a housing bubble or something like that, or the financial system in trouble. Nothing like that. The economy was fine. The financial system was fine. We're doing this to protect ourselves from the virus. And that means that when the virus outbreak is behind us, the economy should be able to recover substantially.
And what sort of support, in your view, do you think the Congress...
Let me just stop it there. Do you think, Dylan, that the economy will recover substantially after this coronavirus outbreak is over?
Obviously not, but that's a function of their explicit policies have been written by the Pelosi-Trump axis of evil to ensure that maximum economic damage is done.
Yes, that's what I thought.
It's been a policy decision.
Yes, to do this. So is he just being like like a cheerleader for the economy when he says that, or does he really think that he knows what's coming, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think he's saying that the economy will recover. He was saying the economy should recover. There's no reason an appropriate policy response to a biological crisis. There's no reason for the response to the biological crisis to create a permanent economic catastrophe.
Right.
The decision to turn the biological crisis into a extended or permanent economic catastrophe is a policy decision made by the Trump Pelosi axis of evil. Right.
Okay. And so now here he gets to the part where he says, here's now one of the most informed guys around, powerful guys around. Here's what he says Congress should be doing. Turns out it's the same thing that me and you have been saying they should be doing. Here we go.
Want to consider?
I don't give them advice on particular policies, but I would say, if I may, that policies that help businesses avoid avoidable insolvencies and that do the same for individuals. Keep workers in their homes, keep them paying their bills, keep families solvent.
Among the options.
So there is a guy saying, hey, make sure everybody has money to pay their bills and make sure all the companies have enough money until this is over so we can start our economy again. They're not doing that at all, right? Dylan, in fact...
No, they've used this as an opportunity to destroy business and consolidate wealth. I mean, they did the opposite. They exploited it for destruction and consolidation.
So now why isn't it...
the opposite? My point is it's not just that they failed to support people and businesses. They exploited the biological crisis as an opportunity to destroy and consolidate.
Yes. So now, why isn't guys like him, like Chairman Powell of the Fed, who he knows what needs to be done in Congress, so why aren't there guys like him or big bankers or people who could have a platform and have gravitas? Why aren't they saying things in a more forceful way?
I mean, he did just go on 60 Minutes, one, so you have to give him credit for that. Two, he is not a politician and he doesn't represent the people. He represents the interest of stabilizing the financial system, which he has done to the great benefit of the super wealthy, and in a way that has avoided further economic pain from adding a financial. So remember, you have 4 potential crises, 3 underway, right?
Right.
Biological crisis, we know. Economic crisis, we know. Social crisis percolating. Financial crisis avoided. Right? Those are the 4 categories of crises that have been brought to either existence or potentiality. And the only crisis that he is in a position to mitigate is the financial crisis. But the issue is entirely resides with the policy decisions made by the Pelosi-Trump apparatus.
Got it. So,
And the Pelosi-Trump apparatus has made conscious decisions to explicitly seek to destroy business, particularly targeting small business and the most vulnerable, while raiding assets as quickly as possible for the super wealthy. I mean, it is literally. I don't know. I can't think of a bad enough metaphor. I would come up with 10 of them, but none of them would be effective enough. I mean, your neighbor's house is on fire. You run inside and steal everything, and I mean that doesn't cut it, right? I mean, they took a biological crisis as an opportunity to raid the country on behalf of the wealthiest in this country as a decision, not as an accident, and not as a result of anybody doing anything wrong. It's nobody's fault in this country that this virus came to exist, but it is the fault of the government that when the virus came to exist, they used its existence as an opportunity to destroy and consolidate.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So why? Well, I guess I understand. I guess I already understand.
Why?
I was going to ask you a question about. So why is it just people still the people in progressive media? I don't think still have understood that. No, in fact, I know for a fact they don't know what's coming or what has been done. And they're still treating like that first stimulus, the CARES Act, they're still treating that as somehow just like another bad vote instead of the kind of thing that should tarnish your political career forever. They don't
mark a historic intersection in the history of America.
Yes,
that may permanently end any semblance of a middle class or even democracy.
And so, what do you say to the people? You hear a lot of knuckleheads out there who don't really understand how things work and are just kind of feckless lefties who say things like, well, what was a Bernie supposed to do? Can you tell them what Bernie, because I've told them, now can you tell them what Bernie was supposed to do? Remember, you said
stop the vote.
He was supposed to what?
Hold the vote. You can put a hold on a vote. A senator can put a hold on a vote. And then if you're as good a speaker as Bernie Sanders is, and you're as smart as Bernie Sanders is, you hold the vote and you go to the floor and you give the biggest barn burner of a speech that you've ever given in your life. It goes viral. And you consolidate support for. So here's what you have to understand. Like, just as it's obvious to Chairman Powell, just as it was obvious to Justin Trudeau, just as it's obvious to the Prime Minister of Germany, go down the list of all these countries. As sure as if you walk into a house and your light bulbs are out and it's the middle of the night and you want to read a book, well, then you have to turn the lights on or replace the light bulb. It's not a political decision. You would like to have light to read. When the biological crisis happened, we turned the lights out on the economy. The only response to that is immediate short-term UBI and immediate access to health care. This is not a political decision. This is, your car has run out of gas. You want to keep your car moving. There is no shortage of resources, as Powell has pointed out and everybody else has reinforced. You simply put the gas in the car because it's much cheaper to put the gas in the car or to replace or to turn on the lights than it is to leave it rotting on the side of the road, such that when you finally try to restart the car or to leave the house overrun with mold and decay, it's much cheaper to simply put the fuel in the car or put the lights on the house than it is to have to repair the rotted, non-functioning car after you've left it for months or the destroyed house. You understand?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think where we get lost is we're like, oh, well, Jimmy Dore this and Jimmy Dore that, or they pick on the identity of the conversation as if it's an expression of an opinion. And there are lots of things that we all have opinions on. it is not a matter of opinion that the appropriate thing when you shut down an economy for a biological crisis is to then put that economy on life support in a way that's much cheaper by putting in the UBI and the access to healthcare. Like it's just, there's a reason every other country in the world did it, and it's not because they're liberal or conservative. It's because they're not vicious, murderous beasts. I don't know. I don't mean I don't know how. I don't even know what to say, Jimmy. I mean,
I know. I'm beside myself too, and you know, I watch other lefty news shows, and they really have a very unsophisticated view of what's happening right now. They don't really understand what's coming, and then their natural reflex is to protect politicians, which is such a childish thing. What do you say about? I mean, do you notice that? Do you notice people still? I don't know how close you monitor the news these days, but or the the personalities, but do you find it strange? Of course I knew that the corporate news wouldn't give the correct breakdown of what's happening, which is why we do a show. But I'm still surprised to find people defending politicians like a fan club instead of understanding the situation. So Bernie should have definitely put a hold on that bill. Just to go over one more time, it's not a Rubik's Cube. Bernie, as you said on the show before, what's the point of having the power to shut down a bill and put a hold on it if you don't use it, right?
You're going to use it once in your life after what we learned in 2008. And when the obvious answer is UBI and healthcare, first, not last, first. Like the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that there's UBI and healthcare, and then in parallel, you have to immediately flood the system with money in order to prevent a financial crisis. So you don't have another compounding crisis.
Right.
So Powell, excuse me, did what he had to do, because it's not. It's like, you know how like if you're in an airplane and like if these fighter jets and then it's going to blow up and you push a button to eject because the plane's going to explode.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not a political decision,
right? Yeah, I know. I got it.
And so you think Powell wants to deal with all the controversy of throwing trillions around to keep the system liquid? Surely he does not, right?
Right.
But in the situation, he threw the switch.
Right.
You think the politicians want to deal with throwing money at UBI and healthcare and all this, whether it's in Germany or Canada or Australia or go down the list? Of course not. It's what you have to do. If you break your arm, do you want to get a cast and reset your arm? No. But am I going to make you just run around with a broken arm and never take you to the doctor? I mean, it's preposterous.
But we should definitely give our politicians a pass for that CARES Act, right? we should definitely. I mean, what were they supposed to do? I mean, Mitch McConnell's the most powerful guy in the world. What are they supposed to do? They're not going to do.
Our politicians have chosen a policy path of destruction and consolidation. It's a decision.
And not only did no one, Sherrod Brown, Elizabeth Warren, not only did no one stop that bill, they voted for it. So they voted for it.
Right.
They not only did not stop it, try to get a coalition of politicians to stop it, try to make the people in America aware of what was actually happening. They didn't do that either. They did nothing. They did absolutely nothing.
No, they provided they
and then they
did nothing. They proactively provided coverage for it by voting for it.
Even that's what I was just about to say. Even worse than doing nothing, they actually went over the line and were actually our enemies, because they then provided cover for this horrible bill, exactly like you said, so that Donald Trump can go, hey, it passed 96-0. What do you mean? Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown, they all voted for it. What are you talking about? So that's when they actually went from just being regular cowards to actually being nefarious, evil actors. Is that too much hyperbole?
No, I don't think so. I mean, evil is in the eye of the beholder. I mean, if you're a beneficiary of destruction and consolidation, you might think that's a good thing. But I think you just have to understand that the destruction and consolidation decision, which is uniquely American in the world, is a concrete, deliberative, considered,
Yes.
and decisive policy decision made by the U.S. government.
Yeah. It's worse than so it's worse than a cowardly act. This is an overt, rapacious screwing and destruction of American culture, society, economy on purpose. And then they get guys like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown to then give cover for it by voting for it without putting a hold on it, stopping it. It is so, and anybody who doesn't share our outrage is either doesn't understand what exactly is going on. I'll just put it that way. They don't understand what's going on, and so you almost can't be angry at them because they just have they watch MSNBC and CNN, and that's what they think is happening, and they don't know any better. It's amazing. So that was,
and even the people that work there. Going back to your earlier question, I mean, my experience working inside of both the financial media and the political media for, I guess, 20 years, give or take, there is a remarkably unsophisticated or openly ignorant understanding of any of the things that we are talking about at a level that is profoundly disturbing, which is largely a function of the fact that most of the people that are in the business are in the business because they thought it would be fun to be on television, and they were good at the horse race, whether it's the horse race of which stock is up or down, or which CEO is up or down in the financial world, or which politician is up or down in the political world, or which identity group or sort of offensive coalition is doing something horrible. And so there's a whole generation of journalists who are extremely skilled at, prosecuting why Republicans are terrible, or defending the righteousness of some constituency or another in terms of that type of advocacy, or celebrating the CEO or of whatever company, or vilifying the CEO of whatever company. But it's really all soap opera.
mm-hmm.
None of it is. It's all just emotional hyperbole. With Jeff Bezos is the greatest CEO that ever lived, or Mark Zuckerberg's the most evil CEO that ever lived, or Bernie Sanders is the greatest leader of our generation, or Donald Trump is the worst, or Bernie Sanders is the worst and Donald Trump is the best, or whatever it is. All that is really just soap opera. And so you have a population of producers, writers, and broadcasters who do not comprehend in any way, shape, or form the economy. And almost none of them, if not none of them, have ever had to depend on the operation of a small business,
Right,
or of even a medium-sized business for their security. They don't understand, because they've always had corporate health care that's very good. They don't understand the actual cost of health care because it's invisible to them, because it's embedded in their comp packages. And they don't understand the consequences of forcing. I mean, imagine if one of the consequences of the coronavirus was, if you watched television news, your eyes would fall out. So now it's illegal for them to have customers. I bet it's
right.
There's a complete and total absence of comprehension of what's happening. And when people don't comprehend something, their first instinct is to dismiss it as those who are trying to bring it up, whether it doesn't matter who's trying to bring it up, as either marginal crackpots, or whatever the mechanism of dismissiveness is, because their primary interest, although I think frequently not conscious, is simply self-preservation of their own identity and relevance as powerful actors in society, which is really where their social identity lives, at all costs. Whether it's a politician or a prominent journalist, it's kind of all the same sickness.
Yeah. Okay. That's great analysis. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hey, this is the part where I tell you where our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then I would tell you to go join our premium, but nobody has a fucking job. So why don't you just enjoy the video?